Today, we shall deal with the issues of privacy, security, isolation, and alienation in the residential context. First, the definitions of what we will be dealing with today. Privacy is a state in which one is not observed or disturbed by other people. Security, the state of being free from danger or threat. Isolation is being without relation to other people or things, separate. Alienation is a lack of identity with or a sense of being controlled or exploited by another force. We will begin today's session with a recap of the pole houses of Ahmedabad, which we discussed in lecture 5. The entire pole was enclosed by a wall and marked with an entrance gateway. Community spaces like the temple and a common quadrangle were at the entrance. The streets were accessed off these spaces, while the houses were accessed off the streets. The elements: a public road, wall, gateway, community spaces, street, and the house. These can broadly be divided into three categories based on control: the state controlled public road. The wall and the gateway define the legal entity, that is, the community land. The community spaces close to the gateway help negotiate the threshold between state controlled and community controlled area. Some degree of casual interaction with outsiders is possible in this area. Streets lead away from common community level spaces to the private home. The negotiation from the public road to the private space is done through various architectural elements like the gateway, community spaces, streets, threshold, and the courtyard. The wall and the door are essentially defendable elements to be used when there is a threat to safety. This is a typical plan of the pole house. We see that all houses follow the same template with minor variations. Within a house, the otla or veranda is a transition space between the street and the house, serving as a platform for casual interactions. The khadki or baitak is the formal social space. The chowk or the courtyard forms the activity hub within the house. Osri, a semi-open family space, accommodates spillover activities from the courtyard and the adjacent kitchen. Parsal is the first truly private room of the house, accessible only to members of the family, and the ordo or the bedroom is the innermost space of the house. This is how the transition from a public street to the more private spaces within the house is achieved. A sequence of spaces with decreasing degrees of public access. Different types of activity define each space. The public leaks into the private. However, it is difficult to imagine a truly undivided family occupying this fairly simple house. What about the privacy for each couple? For this, we look into the Chettinad villages of Tamil Nadu. The Chettiar families were business entities. This necessitated the very large sized family remains absolutely undivided. There is a front male section where business was conducted, a central family section, and a female section at the back. Around the central courtyard is a gallery of double rooms labeled 7 and 8, the Veliyarai and the Ullarai. Each couple occupied a double room, the Veliyarai being their own interaction space and the Ullarai being the most private space. A section through the house shows that there is a courtyard to define each part of the house: the men's, the family, and the women's part. After discussing the typical indigenous context, let us see how the foreign culture of the colonialists expressed itself spatially in India. The evolution of the cantonment. This image is of the Pune cantonment. The core is occupied by spacious officers' bungalows. The barracks for the European officers is made of pakka bricks and situated nearby. The native barracks, having kacha construction, is located at a little distance, while native traders occupied their own colony. This patch, as we can see, is as dense as indigenous settlements that we have discussed so far. The hierarchy is reflected in the built spaces. The officers' bungalow had luxurious space and pakka construction, while the native barracks are made of kacha construction and tight spaces. With the British came in as traders backed by military and were content to live in fortified enclosures safe from natives. However, as the area under their command increased, literally building walls around themselves was impractical. They used planning instead. While the city was full of noise, crowds, unplanned streets, irregular and narrow lanes and bylanes exploding with population, the cantonment presented a landscape which was that of bungalows, each isolated within its private compound, with neat grid type streets, tree lined avenues, and gardens. While this is the experience of walking through a typical street in a pole, this is the wide avenues of the cantonment. Pakka houses, wide roads, avenue plantation, and there was piped water and sewage. While this was projected as superior, it also served to alienate the natives. From macro to the micro, we will now discuss the bungalows in the cantonment. Since the British conquered Bengal first, their first experiments at constructing their own dwellings were modelled on the simple Bengali hut. The bungalow, as we can see in this picture, is as climate responsive as the traditional courtyard house. However, if we were to compare a figure ground diagram, we see that they are the exact opposite. The plan. The compound wall here comes at the level of the individual private property. A thin driveway connects the public road to the house. The portico is a semi open space that allows transition into the more private spaces within the bungalow. The main house is isolated from the servant quarters, which are set at the back of the property, and also the public thoroughfare with little scope for interaction. In the words of an army officer, the officer's bungalow compound, with its intrinsic internal and external spatial and social detachment, was within the same spirit of individualist practice that the British had adopted in early 18th century Calcutta. The Chettinad houses represent an amalgamation of both cultures with a facade inspired by European classicism and a plan based on native lifestyle. So, what does all this mean today? The door and the wall were traditionally used to provide security. Privacy was ensured by various transitional elements like the veranda, arugu, courtyard, foyer, and even portico. Today, probably due to tighter spaces, the door and the wall are being used universally as elements to ensure even privacy. However, this is leading to isolation. How do designers deal with this problem creatively? Thank you.